been talking about, for the last like couple weeks now, but I have yet to see anyone really address this. So, outside of like a select few, which by the way, I will include that post in this video because again, it really kind of outlines exactly what we have been thinking about when it comes to the jobs report, with what the Fed's about to be doing in less than 7 days, and ultimately what's about to happen around crypto. A lot of people think that, oh no, like this market's topped out, like we're done, or oh, we only have about like a month or two left of this cycle. I think almost everyone is wrong about what's about to happen, and it's going to happen in a very short amount of time. Now, if we think about the market right now, on the daily, we are pumping up. There's a lot of great projects that are up significantly today. Even right off the rip, right? Avalanche is up 12.9%. MNT is up 12.5%. We have, XLM 4.2%. I know that it's not much, but it's still a nice gain. We've been seeing gains across the board today. Ondo 4.1%. Again, just an overall great day. And even the last week has been very significant. There's a lot of great projects up in the last week in a crazy amount. I mean, guys, 1,000+% in the last week. Now, I don't have any info on MYX or why it's pumping, but hey, it's pumping up. This is kind of crazy to see. And also on the monthly right now, we can see that there's some very strong gains out there. Most of these are exchange tokens, but there's still a lot of red out there, which tells us we still have a lot more price action to get through here. But again, if we're looking at Bitcoin, if we're looking at Ethereum, if we're looking at just XRP on the daily, all three of these are now green. On the weekly, Ethereum is still a little red. However, XRP is about to break back to $3 plus. Like I said, with XRP is a little bit more special in my opinion, because again, a lot of people are still very wrong about, what can potentially happen with XRP this cycle. Everyone thinks, oh, it's going to top out at like $5, possibly even $7, and that's it. I still think that XRP has that wild card in it where, it could easily jump by like 5x from where it's at now. You're talking about a $15 XRP. I think that we can go pretty crazy with XRP because again, this is like the first cycle that it's fully unleashed since 2017, 2018. And it's also one of the largest cycles for crypto with institutional grade adoption, with Wall Street now, around crypto, the government around crypto as well. We're in a very special time for crypto right now. Now, on top of this, stocks. Today was a very bullish day for stocks, as you guys can see. We closed out about roughly 65.32, but we did hit a high of 65.56. We're on our way to that main target that I've said that we will probably hit towards the end of this year, which is 69.60. This is dead set. I'm going to actually move this a little bit over because again, we've been tracking this number for quite some time now. And I said by the end of this year, we should be well over or at least at $7,000 for the S&P. So I'm still watching this closely. I'm still waiting for it. And again, stocks are telling us to be very bullish on risk on assets at a time where if we go back to the dollar, right, the US dollar index, I mean, this thing has been very bearish. It's been very boring over the last couple of weeks. And this is exactly what we want to see. Now, I do believe that we start to spike back up with the dollar. I think that the dollar has been extremely oversold for quite some time. And I know that that sounds crazy because a lot of people will say, well, Nick, don't you think that the dollar is just going to continue to drop and it's going to die out? No, I don't believe so, right? We go all the way back to 2021. It bottomed out right around the same exact time that alt season started. Now, we did surge all the way into March. Then we sold off yet again all the way into May. This was the last major part of alt season. Most altcoins did top around this time. Now, we did continue to pump in terms of the market all the way up until this point here. Now, the main thing to look at is what is going to be this point over here. Well, I do think that the dollar possibly bottomed out sometime around, June. I do think that alt season is about to start from, somewhere within this range here. Now, the dollar will probably just, start to jump a little bit and then have like a slight sell-off before we continue higher. Now, the main thing to look at is where does the market top out when the dollar starts to get extremely strong? What level are we looking at with the dollar? Well, ultimately, I would say it's about roughly 104. I think that the second that we start to break here, this is where we most likely top out for crypto. Now, what's the time frame on that? Well, we don't know. We don't have anything in front of us to give us a time frame. I would argue that if we are following the 2017-2018 pattern, we should probably top out sometime around January or February of 2026. That's like my best guess here, which again gives us some time still for altcoins to go crazy. I mean, right now, the total for crypto looks as though it wants to break out in a big way. We need to clear this $3.93 trillion level. Once we clear that, we will target those highs going back to the end of August, right around roughly 4.01 trillion, and then also the middle of August, which is right around almost $2 trillion. This will be a new all-time high for the total, and we should start to break back to like $5 trillion plus dollars. Now, we never hit $5 trillion, but this is like my main target for this cycle is like 5 to 7 trillion. We can go significantly higher. I saw a lot of people saying, oh, well, there's no way that we could hit $10 trillion for crypto, right? There's definitely a possibility that we could hit $10 trillion. With how much money is circulating around crypto right now from the institutional side and the Wall Street side, there's a good possibility that we could easily double the value from where we are at right now, and that's almost like $8 trillion. So again, it's definitely possible. Now, beyond that, let's look at what just happened in July, because here we have from the Kabaisi letter, breaking global broad money supply rose 9.3% year over year in July to a record $140 trillion. This metric covers 169 countries and territories, representing 99% of global GDP. Since the beginning of the year, money supply in US dollars has jumped by plus $10 trillion since the beginning of the year. World money supply has risen by a massive $40 trillion since the 2020 pandemic. This represents a compounded annual growth rate of 7%. Global liquidity is surging. And this is one of the most important charts to focus on, because what this is showing us is that these markets are going to see a vast amount of liquidity flooding into them. Everyone keeps asking or wondering, what's going to push these markets significantly higher? It's global liquidity improving. That's why we're at this point right now. This is exactly why, if we go back in time to the bottom, right? Let's go all the way back in time to the bottom. We bottomed back in 2022. Looking at this chart, do you guys see 2022 on this chart? It's about the middle of 2020 into 2025, where global liquidity had a big drop. That's where we bottomed, because liquidity after that point improved drastically. That's what caused the total to be where it's at today. Now, when we think about this, I still believe that we are going to go much higher from this point on, especially considering the fact that with fresh liquidity, and now with the FOMC meeting 6 days out now, with a probability of a 100% chance of a rate cut both in September, October, and then also we have another one in December, it seems as though the Fed is going to also flood the system with fresh liquidity. We also know that the Treasury has been buying up debt in a big way, billions of dollars worth of debt. But this is not where it all ends, because we've been talking about the Fed cutting rates for quite some time. Let's go over here to Julian Battelle. This is that post that I was talking about in the beginning of the video, saying that somebody has the same thought process that I have. It's been 5 days since the August jobs report dropped, and I've gone through at least 20 takes. The narratives are all over the place, making it hard to separate signal from noise. Here's what actually matters. Unemployment keeps grinding higher, exactly as our lead indicators and GMI/MIT work flagged back in Q1. That keeps the Fed engaged. At the same time, the earliest signs of a cyclical recovery in employment are already showing up in the data. Our GMI Early Workforce Activity Index makes that crystal clear, chart number 1, which this is that chart here, which we'll go over here in a second. So on one side, you've got the Fed anchored by lagging unemployment data. On the other, the forward-looking data is already turning higher. Classic business cycle dominoes in action, chart number 2. Again, here we have chart number 2. You have the GMI Financial Conditions Index. You also have the risk assets and also the central banks as well, with the ISM in the middle. Now, if we go to the next point here, the punchline, bullish. The Fed is easing into cyclical upswing, as shown in our lead indicators chart number 3. Again, here we have the GMI interest rate model. We also have the recession and then also the ISM. If we're looking at this, it seems as though it's kind of right back towards like that 2020, 2021 timeframe, where we're just waiting for the ISM to pop to the upside to really kind of catch up to everything. And then we also have, and that's exactly why the S&P 500 earnings revisions are exploding higher. Chart number 4. Again, here we have chart number 4, the S&P 500 net 12-month forward EPS upgrades. And again, we also have the ISM. It's very clear here that we are about to see an uproar in the entire cycle. Right? We're not just talking about the S&P. We're not just talking about the business cycle. No, we're talking about every single asset class is going to follow this. We are about to witness these markets surge significantly because everything that we have been noticing, even around the, jobs report, it's all indicating that we should be extremely bullish here. It's at a time also where everyone's concerned about altcoins. Like, for an example, XRP, this is XRP right now on the price chart, right? Everyone was so concerned because we made a new high and we just didn't go parabolic immediately, right? We topped a little bit back in July and then all of a sudden, boom, we get this big wipeout. Everyone's panicking. We continue to chop to the downside. Now we're chopping back to the upside where we are about to break over that $3.08 zone yet again. The second that we clear this is where we go crazy, right? I just want you guys to understand that this is where we go crazy. The second that we start to pop here is where we go crazy because the next level in which we will retest is $3.32. Yeah, we might sell off a little bit. We might chop. But after that, we target these highs. We go to $4 plus. And then all of a sudden, everything aligns perfectly for alt season to go crazy. Alt season right now is building behind the scenes. Whether you like to admit it or not, it's okay. You don't have to. All we need to know in order to understand that alt season's brewing is go and look at the altcoin season index. We are now at 63 out of 100. This recently spiked in a big way from the 7th all the way to now. So in the last 3 days, this thing spiked from, 50 to 64. On top of this, Bitcoin dominance is selling off still, looks extremely weak on the weekly. Seems as though this pattern is going to continue to print out on this chart. And also Ethereum dominance is also selling off currently. And by the way, looking at the RSI on this, the RSI has been cooked. This is the first time on the weekly, by the way, that we've been cooked in RSI since going all the way back to like May of 2021. This is crazy. This is also telling us that Ethereum dominance will most likely continue to sell off from this point here. I was expecting that we get up into like the mid 16.5% to like 19% range. But it seems as though this could be a topping signal for Ethereum dominance. That doesn't mean that Ethereum doesn't continue to go up in value. I still think that Ethereum does, but I'm not expecting Ethereum dominance to have like that massive crazy push like it had back here in 2021. So I don't expect 20+% on Ethereum dominance. If anything, we might not be top tier officially on dominance. We might have a little bit of a sell-off. And then we start to cook a little bit back up into this red zone. That's what I personally would like to see. Again, it's questionable on what happens here because, altcoins are looking very good. If we're looking at others' dominance, remember we have been focused on this chart for quite some time. This is telling us, and this is actually showing us altcoins. And this is the dominance outside of the top 10 as well. So this is that altcoin season indicator. And just looking at this real quick, we are starting to push higher on others' dominance, which is why we are seeing a drop on Bitcoin and Ethereum dominance. But also, we just got a big cross over the moving average for the first time since going all the way back to November of last year. So this is telling us that altcoins could soon wake up in a much larger way, which is also why right now on, CoinMarketCap, if we get out of this chart and just go to gainers and losers in the let's just go to the last 30 days, we'll go to the top 500. Just taking a quick look at some of these gains, we are starting to witness a lot of altcoins waking up in a big way. And this is because of dominance shifting in the space. This is where we start to see a lot of these altcoins starting to make some pretty violent moves. Now, everyone is wondering, all right, well, what about XRP? What about HTOR? What about all these other altcoins? Yeah, they're also going to see those big moves. We just have to be a little bit more patient here and watch for the liquidity to drop down into the market and shift from Bitcoin and Ethereum into these other large caps. I still think that we are in the Ethereum phase of the market. I still think that we are in phase 2. I don't think that we are in phase 3 just yet. I still think that we have some time, like I said, up until about roughly the first quarter of 2026. So don't get too impulsive here. But the main thing here is that I feel like almost everyone is wrong about how high we can go. Like a lot of people still think like, Bitcoin, You know, what type of upside potential does Bitcoin have from here? You know, we already hit $123,000 or $124,000. I still think that Bitcoin can hit 150, 160K. I'm not expecting like anything crazy after that. But that could lead to Ethereum reaching 10K plus. That could lead to XRP reaching, 10, 15, possibly even $20. It could lead to the entire market just going insane. Nobody knows exactly where these altcoins and where these markets are going to top out on. But we do know one thing: focus on the emotions. Still, right now, there's still a lot of fear and greed out there, right? Fear right now, 47. The fear and greed index is at 47, so neutral. There's still a lot of people panicking on X. There's still a lot of people fearful. A lot of people are in disbelief. They don't think that we are going higher. And this is what tells me that we are going much higher. The liquidity provisions are improving greatly. The Fed is